The voices were actually me telling myself that I needed help, and I wasn't realizing it, so the voices were screaming. And once I did get the help, the voices stopped.
So today I have again a special guest from the US, and this is very welcome to the show, Karen Wilson. Karen, how are you today?
I'm really excited and wonderful. And Beata, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my message on your new YouTube channel, and congratulations for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, joining. And, I'm always curious about the life stories and how people and why people do what they do and what is their history and so on. And I think you as well do a very special work, and you did your miles in your life. So you you have a lot of experience. I think you went through a lot of things. And so let me ask you a question. I know that you a co-author of books and that you're doing a very special work. So how did it start, Karen? How did you
Well,
start?
that's a huge story, Beata. Thank you for asking, and I will take you through it a little bit at a time, and hopefully it will become a cohesive whole by the time I get to the end. Um, when I was a little girl, I was always treated with disdain and rejected by most of the people in my world. My parents were narcissistic. They really didn't understand how to be parents. And of course, there's no parenting book. So, they did what they did best, and that's all they could do. But from the time I was little, I learned that I had to be perfect in order to get what I needed. And I also had to become a people pleaser, because if I didn't do that, I didn't get anything. And I went through a lot of pain in my childhood. When I was 12 years old, though, I had a vision. And in the vision that appeared to me, I was looking out the window on a cold winter's day where the trees were all bare and it was nighttime, and it was dark out and the trees were silhouetted and there was a moon. I saw in the reflection of the window a new face that appeared. And it was an old woman with white hair. And she told me that my mission on this planet in this lifetime would be to help others. And it was not spoken out loud, it was spoken in my head. And then she was gone in a flash, just gone. And I'm 12, so I'm looking at that going, okay, so what? So it didn't affect me other than to have had it and to remember that I have it. And so I went through my life, it kept going. During my childhood, my mother decided to reverse roles with me, and she wanted me to be the adult and make all her decisions for her, which of course I couldn't do. And eventually she and my parents went through a very bad breakup of their marriage. And during that time, I was helping her raise my littlest brother, and he was born when I was 15, 13. And I was helping to raise him, and she was out running around with other men. And my father was doing the same thing. And finally, they got divorced. And I ended up with her, and she decided that I didn't really need to go to school. I was in 10th grade, and all of a sudden, she's there at the front of the school in the car. I get off the bus, or I get out of my father's car. I've been dropped off, and there she is waiting to pick me up so she can take me home to babysit so she could go have fun. So I missed almost the entire year of 10th grade, and I had to repeat it. And we moved to a new city when my parents got divorced. And people were just as bad there as they were in my first one. because I was the only redhead in the whole school system with curly hair, freckles, and glasses. You know, nobody else had that. So I was an outcast and I was treated very badly. But when we moved to this new city, my mother was still running around and doing all kinds of things. And of course, left to my own devices, I got pregnant. And neither one of my parents were willing to accept any responsibility for that. And they kicked me out. So I was 17. I was homeless. I had no place to go, and no money and no training of any kind. You know, I was brought up in a upper middle class family and had a nice lifestyle, but you know, that was not training to go out in the workforce. And so I ended up going to see the guy who got me pregnant, who of course didn't want to have anything to do with me after I announced that I was. And he let me stay for a short time, but he was at that time, unbeknownst to me, suffering from PTSD from having been in Vietnam. So he couldn't handle it and he kicked me out. So at that point, it's, you know, a cold winter's afternoon, you know, I think it was late fall, probably November, December. And I was walking from his house to my mother's first cousin's house. It took me an hour or two to walk, you know, the distance. And I went to her doorstep and I just started crying. And, you know, I told her the whole thing and she took me in. She was a sweetheart. So I slept on the couch. And the couch was like 4.5 feet long, made of brocaded silk with wooden arms that were very uncomfortable to sleep up against. I had to sleep curled up in the fetal position and I had a big belly by then. It was really, really difficult. And in the back room, my mother's first cousin's husband, whom I call uncle and aunt, my uncle's father was dying in the back room. So here I am on the couch. I'm going to have a baby. And here's this man in the back room and he's going to die. So it was a very interesting scenario to live through. And I was terrified of everything that was going to happen to me because I had no idea. And my aunt did arrange for me to give the baby up for adoption because I couldn't support myself. How am I supposed to support a child? You know, I was an immature girl of 17 years old and faced with this situation. So she arranged an adoption for me, which was really great. It was a private one through her physician, her gynecologist. And then every day through the rest of my pregnancy, I had panic attacks and I was breathing in paper bags because I was so terrified of what's coming. I had no idea what was going to happen to me, literally. And I turned 18 during the pregnancy. And finally, I got through to the day of labor. It was actually 2:00 in the morning. I went into labor pains and my aunt and uncle drove me to the nearest hospital and dropped me off and left me. I was in the hospital alone, terrified and having labor pains and not knowing what's happening to me or anything else. So I went through that birth, which was really difficult. And I had decided I didn't want to see the child. And then I realized that was not a good idea. Everybody said to me, you need to see it. Because if you don't see it, you're always going to wonder. So then I had to try to convince them to let me see the baby. And after I was done giving birth, they stuck me in a side room that was a collection of old unused furniture. It wasn't even a hospital room with a bed in it. And that's where I was for the next few days. I finally did get to see the baby. And it was the most amazing experience. His eyes were open, whether he could actually see or not yet. He was like 2 days old. And he just looked in my eyes. And I just looked in his eyes. And there was this meeting of the souls, this moment of connection. And it was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced in my whole life. And I never forgot that. And then the next day, I had to get dressed, and the guy who was adopting the baby, the father, showed up at the hospital to collect him. I had to hand that baby to the adopting father. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. Other than giving birth by myself, that was so traumatic, so awful. And I was crying my eyes out. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't look presentable, and I wanted to, and I couldn't. But when I met the father, even with sunglasses on, I could see through them to his eyes, and his eyes were lit up like diamonds. And he was almost drooling over this baby because it was something he really wanted, a child. And I felt, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Here is this man who wants this baby so badly that he's like that. And so I felt, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I handed him the baby, and then I had to go on with my life. Well, I had all kinds of emotional and spiritual issues from the time I was a child, from having been so mistreated by everybody. And I still had them. And I now had to go forward in my life and go get a job and support myself. And I went through a whole lot of trauma looking for love, which is what I was looking for in the first place and didn't find it. And what I found out was that people thought I was really attractive. You know, I had a red hair, it was really long and flowing like yours, except it was all wavy. And all they wanted was to have sex. And that was it. And I didn't know enough because I was so unsocialized, you know, didn't have friends, didn't understand how to really work with people and have relationships. So I thought, oh, if I go out with them, they'll love me. And they didn't. And I went through one man after another. And finally, when I was about 21, I had a relationship with my cousin. We talked on the phone, wrote letters, and he was in California, and he had sent me an airline ticket and said, come. So I went, and when I got there, we took one look at each other and said, ew, but I was there. I didn't have anything to go back to, so I stayed in California. And I met a man. In fact, I was working for him, and we fell in love as much as somebody can fall in love who doesn't really have maturity and emotional maturity at that. And I married him. And after I did that, I was realizing I did the worst thing I could do to myself, because now I'm trapped in a marriage, because I really didn't believe in divorce at that time. And I'm trapped in a marriage, and I'm really unhappy with everything, with myself, with life, with everything. And I was just sick for days after I married him. And then I started to hear voices, and the voices in my head were screaming. And I thought, I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do now. So, you know, I told him, and we found a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist. And he took me, and I started working with the man. And he helped me a lot. It took a while, and he helped me a lot. But after I was done with that, I was realizing I needed to work on myself. So I went through the direction of finding help for myself, self-development courses, whatever I could do. And in the meantime, I was working, and eventually I divorced him because he was just like my father. He wasn't emotionally available. He was distant. He spent his time drinking and watching television. And I raised his 4 children in the meantime. And when I got them, I was 21 years old. They were 5, 7, 9, and 11. And the mother was unfit, and they were allowed to run wild. And when I got them, I had this handful of kids. I didn't know anything about really being a mother other than having mothered my little brother when he was born for a couple of years. So here I am trying to help them. And, you know, I don't know how to discipline kids. And, you know, it was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. The oldest one was unable to even read when I got her. And the youngest one had been allowed to just sleep in his clothes, never took showers. That was a big mess. And so I straightened them out as much as I could. But by the time I got to, you know, 9 years after I married my first husband, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I had enough. So I divorced him at 10 years. And then I bumped into my second husband. And he was just like my father. and, emotionally unavailable, a bully, but handsome. And of course, we thought we were in love, etc. You think that when people are attractive, but you're attracted to somebody who's going to do the same thing to you again that you had as a situation before, because that's the vibration you're putting out. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So I was with him for 20 years. And during those 20 years, I really knew I shouldn't be with him. He wasn't the right person for me, but I really wasn't confident in myself to go out and get divorced and go support myself, because I really wasn't doing the greatest job at that. I wasn't a good money manager. Nobody taught me how to do that. And eventually I did divorce him. And then I went to therapy because I thought, okay, I need some counseling, because so far I've done 2 bad marriages. Neither one of those gentlemen were the right person for me, and I need some help. So I got some counseling. And what I discovered was that I had modeled myself after my dysfunctional parents. So I'm looking for a man that's like my father. Red flag. So I said, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. And now that I realize it, I can stop. And I was still going for, what can I do for self-help, self-growth programs? And I found my third husband, and he and I got along really well. We were like 2 peas in a pod. We could talk to each other. We accepted each other as we were. There was no judgment. It was amazing. We had fun with each other, and I'd never had that in my whole life. I didn't have fun with anybody. I mean, nobody even wanted to ask me to the prom when I was in, 8th grade and we were graduating from junior high school. I didn't even have a date because nobody liked me. I was the outcast. There were a few others, but, that was not an experience I'd ever had. So I started having fun and everything. And in the meantime, I discovered this program that I went through. And the gentleman who ran it was actually a physicist. And he wrote a program about healing yourself, peeling the layers of the onion. But he also incorporated physics, the laws of the universe. And it was the first time I was exposed to that, and I loved it. And so I took that program. That took me like a year and a half. And I started to realize, wow, I'm coming into a larger world. There's so much more out here for me to learn. And in the meantime, I went ahead and found a spiritual path. And the spiritual path had the same basic guidelines as the training I had just been through, except it was focused on spirituality. And so I started to take, that path, and I started to learn, and eventually I got a mentor. And in the meantime, my third husband and I got married. We had a wonderful wedding, happiest stay of my entire life. And the spiritual mentor in the meantime was working with me and helping me to realize that I was carrying a 10-ton boulder behind me. I was dragging it because I had all this emotional baggage that I had never released, and all these old paradigms and attitudes that I had adapted to get me through my life, as safety precautions, but they don't really work, because all you're doing is attracting more of the same. And so I started working on myself, and eventually I met my friend Barbie Layton, and she and I became fast friends, and we've been friends ever since. It's been at least 15 years. And at one point, she and her friends decided to create a growth program for self-development. And she needed people to beta test it. So I volunteered, of course, I need to take this program. And it's called the Infinity Life. And the Infinity Life focuses on what is your core wound. And everybody has one, and some people have 2, and offshoots. And what are your unmet needs? And here's the process around it so that you can learn to release them, to start to raise your frequency, and I'll speak about that in a moment, and attract from a higher place. So I took that course, and I was so happy with it. I became a facilitator, a training facilitator for the course. And I've worked with people ever since, and I absolutely love that. It's my passion to help others. And we are relaunching the website right now. And once it's launched, then we will be having marketing for worldwide for people to join up and help themselves.
So
now,
before you go on with the program and everything, just let me jump in a little.
Sure.
because this is an amazing, incredible story, and I have a question for you.
Sure.
Did you ever appreciate yourself by the deepest of your heart that you have gone through that all?
No, I didn't. But that's coming.
Okay, that's now coming. Okay.
That's coming.
Because I have the sense it's time for it.
No, it's definitely time. Any more questions before I go?
Yeah, I have another question. The situation with the window and the vision you got and the face from this old woman you saw with your 12 years old as a 12 years old child, and then again the voices in your head when you were 21 and married with the first one with the 4 children. So how is it? Do you still get these messages? Do you still have the voices, or do they come when they are needed because you are in a situation where you should go out of?
The voices were actually me telling myself that I needed help, and I wasn't realizing it, so the voices were screaming. And once I did get the help, the voices stopped.
Okay.
And with the spiritual path, I now have an inner guide that I met in the spiritual path. And the inner guide communicates with me for my next step. What is my next step? And puts things in my path for me so that I know what my next step is, and answers questions. And, you know, I do have that guidance now, and it's not anymore screaming. Yeah, that was really amazing.
Yeah.
Really amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how it shifted, and it's amazing how you have been connected always, and therefore, in spite of being mistreated all over, still protected.
Yes, and I really was guided, and I didn't realize that woman who appeared to me was a symbol of my inner guide at that time, someone who I could accept and not be frightened. And eventually, when I did find my inner guide, then I realized how connected I am to the spiritual world and how much guidance there is for me. And I love the fact that the guide is always there for me 24/7. I can always count on my spiritual guide to guide me as I need it. And, you know, that's an amazing thing to feel so spiritually grounded.
Yeah.
And to know I'm not alone and I'm taken care of.
Yeah. And, you know, from your story, is this the chapter you have written? It's about forgiveness. Has this something to do with that, what you have experienced in your past?
Yes, absolutely. When I went through the Infinity Life, I realized I had still a lot of work to do on myself, because that basically helps get you started. And I discovered what my core wounds were and started working on them. And I just want to touch on the frequencies. Mm-hmm. This is important as a part of the whole. Dr. David Hawkins, and he's an MD and a PhD, wrote a book called Power versus Force. And in that book, he showed people that you can actually measure emotional frequency. And it's very simple. And that's something I learned to do in the Infinity Life. Measure my own frequency. If I'm low, work on clearing my energies and raise it. And as you work on yourself with this process, you're raising your frequency all the time. And eventually you get to the place where you're in a higher frequency on a regular basis. And so you're attracting people and opportunities from that higher frequency. And the goal is to stay over 500 on the scale of 0 to 1,000, because over 500 is love. So that's the goal. And every single day, it's a practice of connecting to the light and clearing my energy and then measuring where am I. So as I went through this process, eventually Barbie introduced me to a publisher. And I had always wanted to write my story. And there's way more to it than what I did write. I just wrote a snippet, a little extract of my story. But I had the opportunity to get into this book, and it was a collaboration book on forgiveness. So I did write the book, and this is it. Ignite Forgiveness. Yes. I don't know if you can see the whole thing. And I do have it available on my website. And what the book allowed me to do was, it was like a catharsis for me, because I hadn't really released everything, and it was needed, especially from having had the baby, that whole experience that led up to it, and then afterwards having to go forward, having lost the baby. And so I went through and wrote the book, wrote my chapter in the book. And as I did that, I went through a catharsis of emotions, and that also helped me to continue the process of releasing everything that I had baggage that I was holding on to. And what I also realized when I wrote this book was, because I found that in order to really go forward in your life with getting rid of all the baggage, you have to forgive everybody that it was involved in any pain they ever caused you. Because if you don't do that, you cannot move forward spiritually. You cannot raise your frequency as high as it can go. You cannot open yourself up as much and be a full channel, an open channel for spirit, if you don't do that. So I realized forgiveness is part of the journey, and very important part, to raise your frequency and be able to help others. So that's what my chapter was about, was everything that I mentioned in the story. And writing that, I was hoping that people would have some benefit from reading it and realize, if they're trapped in any kind of relationship that's unhappy, if they are trapped in a relationship with themselves that's unhappy, that there needs to be forgiveness all the way around. You have to forgive yourself first, and you have to forgive everyone else. And what I came to is what Shakespeare said: everyone is a player on the stage. Everyone. They all come into this life to play their part. Everyone plays their part for each other. We all have interwoven parts, because we're all interwoven together. And so we get the experiences that we need to grow spiritually, and they get their experiences too. So I had to recognize that in order to forgive everyone in my life that treated me so badly. I had to forgive my parents. I had to forgive all the people that bullied me in school, at work. I was bullied at work all the way through my career very badly, because I hadn't realized yet that I was a target, because my frequency was low and it was attracting all these narcissistic people that wanted to bully others. So I had to forgive everybody, the father of my child, everybody, my 2 ex-husbands. I had to forgive them all, because it was really for me, because they don't care. They don't know. They're never going to know. But what is it doing for me? It's releasing me from all that baggage. So my story is called The 10-Ton Boulder, which was a very apt name for the journey I went through. And I did the forgiveness work, and it took me a while. It did, because both of my parents had passed on. I had made amends with my father, but not my mother. And I saw her before she passed on, and she was happy to see me, and that made me feel good. But there was so much history there, so much abuse, so much narcissism, never a thank you, never an appreciation. And I really had to work on forgiving her. It took me a very long time. And I don't know if you believe in, the spirituality where people can connect with you from beyond the grave. But I was sitting on my couch one day and I felt this little tiny touch on my arm. And I thought, what is that? It itched, so I ignored it. It kept coming back. And then I finally tuned in. It was my mother. She was trying to get my attention and say, I'm sorry and please forgive me.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
This is really, yeah, this is really something. So what I get is when you go through deep emotions and deep things, that then the spirits, whoever it is, want really be connected to you. So it's like a proof
Yes.
of something that you have to know. You never go alone. Yeah, you are never alone.
No.
And what I'm curious about is, did you forgive yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
I not only forgave myself, but I started doing the work on myself of appreciating who am I?
Yeah.
And what are my good points? And what do I have to recommend myself to others as a person? It's not who I am at work. It's not what I do for a job. It's who am I as a person, as a soul, as a being. And I had to really go through a lot of digging, releasing all the layers of the onion and peeling them back to find myself and to recognize I'm soul. I'm perfect as I am. I'm a beautiful being of light. That's how I came in. I just got covered over with emotional garbage that I didn't understand was there. Yeah. And I had to uncover myself to get back to who I really am. And because of everything I went through, my passion is really helping others and helping them to see that's who they are too. And what can I do? How can I help them to uncover their own truth and get to the place where they feel happy with themselves and can accept themselves and love themselves just the way I do now for me.
Is this what you are doing with your Infinity Life training?
Yes, that is exactly what it is. And before I talk about that, I just want to mention that I was blessed by God. I had been asking all my life to find my son. And in 2018, I found him. And I got to meet him. And I have 2 grandchildren. And I really felt like that helped me heal. Part of the problem was I had this hole in my heart from giving him away. And always was wondering, is he okay? Where is he? Who is he? What's his name? All of the things that you wonder. And that's a terrible wrench to give away a child. So that helped me also do some healing, to meet him and to find out that he had been looking for me and to actually, yeah.
Wow.
And yeah. And that was another thing. My inner guide led me to him. I was sitting at the kitchen table one night and I was 8:00 at night and I was just wrapping things up and I heard the voice, go online and look for an adoption website. And I had done that more than once and never found him. And I said, okay, because when my inner guide tells me to do something, I do it. Because you want to always respect your inner guide, because if you don't do what they tell you, why should they help you more? So I went online and I looked for an adoption website and I found one that I hadn't gone on yet. And I posted my query and I looked for him. You look for your child by their birthday and where, and then if possible, a description. I had 36 answers because there are always children that are looking for a parent that were born around the same time. But the very one at the very tippy top of the list was his actual birthday. And I thought to myself, I'll bet you that's him. And the next morning, and of course I sent the email out, I'm looking for my son. He was born on this date in this city and he has red hair. And You know, he weighed this much and so forth. And the next day I got an email, and the email was on their system. You know, you don't give out your personal information. It's safe. So I got this email from him. What is your maiden name? And I thought, oh, it's him. He knows who I am. Oh my God, that's amazing. So of course I emailed him back. And then he messaged me and said, we need to talk. We have a match. Yeah.
Wow.
That was,
Amazing.
for me, that was just the most incredible moment, because I've had a few incredible moments, you know, in my life. And that was one of them that I will never forget, ever. And so I had my DNA done. I had already done it 3 years earlier. And so I encouraged him to get his done at the same place at ancestry.com. And it was a match. He found out 3 weeks later. And then I flew back to New York, which is where he was born and was living. And I met him. I met his girlfriend. I met her daughter, and I met my 2 grandchildren. And that was an incredible experience. Incredible. And we're working on the relationship. It's not something that's easy, because he went through a lot of pain, not knowing why I gave him up. And unfortunately, he found out about it when his adopted mother died, when he was only 8 years old. His father told him, don't worry, she's not your real mother. At 8 years old, he lost his identity and his mother all in one fell swoop. That poor child.
When did you meet him?
2018, on the weekend of Labor Day, on September 1st.
So which age was he at that time?
He was 48.
Wow. So he was more or less searching 40 years.
I suspect so. He was really angry when he found out that he wasn't his mother's son that he thought he was, and that there was another mother who had given him away. He was really angry, and it took him a long time to process that. And honestly, I don't think he really processed it, because people stuff their emotions if they don't have guidance on how to process them. And most people, especially men, don't know how to do that. So he said that he got over it. And when I explained to him all of the circumstances, he totally forgave me. And, you know, he wanted to have that relationship with me, and, you know, have me have the relationship with the kids. And that was a beautiful thing. And then COVID happened, and, you know, things go up and down in my life financially. I was never able to go back to New York for a visit. And it's been 5 years. And in the meantime, they've grown 5 more years. They were 10 and 8, and now they're 13 and 15. And, you know, they're different people. I don't know them. And I don't have that much contact with them. They have their lives. So I'm hoping that will change. But the miracle of it was that it helped me heal. I hope it helped him heal. The kids never really knew about me, so it really wasn't an issue for them. But it's part of the overall process of raising your frequency. And I want to speak about that. What the Infinity Life training program does is we meet with each customer, and we help them understand what their core wound is, and if they have more than one, and their unmet needs. And then we teach them the process of releasing them. And they work on themselves every single day. They also work with the other people in the cohort to practice on each other, so that it becomes a natural process for them. And they do it on a daily basis, and it becomes part of their life to do that every day. And by doing that, they're releasing the energies that are stuck in their bodies from the intense emotions they experienced that caused the core wound in the first place. You could call it an emotional wound, because that's what they all are.
Yeah.
And then once I've worked with them and taught them the process, then I monitor them and I meet with them if they need any help. It takes about 8 to 12 weeks to go through the process. And there's Q&As, and they have the opportunity to become a facilitator for the course themselves if they so desire. If they want to just graduate and just have the training for themselves, that's fine. If they want to help others, they can take that last training, and it's all part of it, and then become certified as a facilitator for the course. And we're, of course, always looking for more, but they have to go through the course first. That's super important.
So let me ask you, do you work online with your clients? Yeah, this
Yes.
is possible. So you don't
all of it's done this way on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, all of it's on Zoom. And it was started during COVID, so of course everything was on Zoom then, and it's just so much more efficient and easy because we have people from all over the world who sign up, and I have friends now from all over the world from that original cohort that I was with. And some of them have become trainers, facilitators for the program. And they're really good, compassionate people who are intuition based and really can get insight into the person's issues and help them. And it's just phenomenal what this course does. And there's nothing else like it. And the fact is that it's so fast because it's so easy to discover what the core wound is. It's just immediate. Once you are in this process of discovery, it's very simple. And then once they know what it is, everything starts to fall into place and they can start working on it. It's so much better than years and years of therapy. And it goes directly to the subconscious. And then you have the advantage of knowing what you're dealing with and how to handle it. Because when you're walking around wounded, you have no idea. You don't know why people are treating you the way they treat you. I didn't know why I was being bullied throughout my entire life. I had no idea I had a target on my back because my vibration, my frequency was very low. I was attracting narcissists left and right.
Yeah, and this is where we are now. So raising your own vibration means raising the earth vibration. And
that's right.
And what you are teaching as well is this connection to your own soul, to your being, to accept everything. Because from my point of view, there is no right or wrong or good or bad. So
no, everything is just experience, right?
Yes, that's right. So Karen, if somebody wants to work with you and wants to figure out more about you, where can they connect you?
Well, there's two places. The first place is I have a website, and it's very important to type in the https:// meetkarenwilson.com. The https:// is the important part because there's 100 different Karen Wilsons out there at meetkarenwilson.com. So that https:// gets the person right to my website. And the book is available on the website as well. And there's a link to the Infinity Life on my website. We're also launching the new the Infinity Life website. That's coming online probably within a week or so. So that is www.theinfinitylife.com, theinfinitylifeusa.com. And it is a global training, and the name of the company just happens to have USA in it. But it is not only for the US, it's for everybody.
So what kind before we finish, do you have an exercise? Do you have a tip? Do you have something which the people who saw you now, who saw us in the interview, can practice right away?
I do. Everybody who can or who's interested can go in the bathroom and do what's called prizing. Now, prizing is where you stand in front of the mirror, and most people do this with no clothes on because they want to see themselves as they are. And you put your hands on your hips like Superman or Superwoman, and you imagine yourself, plant your feet wide apart like they do, the power stance. And you imagine yourself with the cape flowing and the wind blowing the hair, and you're really powerful standing on the top of a mountain. And then you start to look in the mirror in your own eyes and you say, I love you, whatever your name is. Let's say it's me. I love you, Karen Wilson. You're amazing. Wow, look at everything you've done in your life. Look at what you've accomplished. Look at the amazing skills you have. You're really good at talking with people. You're really good at communication. You're really intuitive. You're helpful. You really care about others. You want to help them in whatever way you can. You have integrity. You have honesty. You're willing to share from your heart. Whatever your qualities are as a person, you prize yourself and you say, I love you, your name. And you do that for 2 minutes every day. And this process will help you have self-esteem and start to pull in to yourself that understanding that you really have good qualities and you really are worth it and you really do have value to yourself and therefore others. And this is a daily practice. I still do it. It's really worth it and it doesn't take very long. And, that's what I can leave you with. But I want to make one more comment before we close. In Dr. Hawkins' book, he talked about how he went around the world and measured frequencies, because this is important. This practice actually affects the world, and people don't realize what the effect is of energy. And he went around the world and he measured frequencies, and he found that in some cities, there's very low frequencies because a high crime rate is there. So they did experiments. They went to another country, India. They found yogis who practice meditating hours a day, and they have the ability to raise their own frequency and connect as a one with the whole world and the planet and all life. They brought them to these cities. And what they found is that when the yogi meditated for a few hours and raised his own consciousness and his own frequency, sending out love, the entire crime rate dropped several percent in the city, in the surrounding city. And it was measurable. And they found that one person affects 750,000 people in their vicinity. One person. So if you raise your frequency on a daily basis and you're sending out love by doing that into your vicinity, think about all the people, how they're getting this higher vibration, and it's affecting them and changing them. And that's the purpose of the infinity life.
Yes, of course. And the 2 minutes every day can change not only your life, it can change the whole environment.
Yes.
And that's amazing.
Yes. And of course, if you add into the statements, I forgive myself for anything that I ever did to myself unknowingly, and I forgive myself for all of it, that helps, because you're realizing, hey, you're human. You learn by experience. You make mistakes. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
But you're supposed to also recognize there's a lesson in there. And if you don't get the lesson, or you don't try to help yourself from the lesson, then you're never going to learn. So you have to actually look at these experiences and say, okay, what's my lesson here? I can forgive myself because I didn't know any better, but now I do. And
Yes.
how can I change going forward?
Yeah. So what do you, Karen, wish for the world and for yourself?
I wish for everyone, including myself, to become who they truly are inside, so they can find the happiness that belongs to them and to have the higher experiences, the better people in their lives, the higher opportunities for better careers and so forth. And that's what I wish for everybody, to have the love that they deserve as a person and the respect.
So thank you so much, Karen. This was a wonderful time with you, and I appreciate so much your work. And just keep going. We all need people like you to raise the vibration of the earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beata. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope that you continue offering this interview process to others so that people can find out about all the other people that are doing good work.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey and tell others about this channel. And please subscribe.